Hello everyone, and welcome to RadioCSIRT English Edition, your daily cybersecurity briefing. I am Marc Frederic Gomez, your French cybersecurity voice covering today's threat landscape. I hope you are doing well. In this episode, Adobe Reader ZeroDay, an unpatched vulnerability actively exploited since November 2025, targeting fully updated installations with no fix available. On April 9, 2026, researcher Haifei Li, founder of EXPMON, a sandbox-based exploit detection system, publicly disclosed the existence of a zero-day vulnerability in Adobe Acrobat Reader that has been actively exploited in the wild for at least 5 months. Adobe was notified on April 7, 2026. No CVE number has been assigned. No patch is available. The vulnerability affects fully up-to-date installations of Adobe Reader, meaning patching the application does not protect against this exploit. The full forensic analysis published by researcher N3MES1S confirms a low-volume, highly targeted campaign with a high operational security C2 infrastructure. The estimated CVSS 3.1 score is 7.8, rising to 8.6. If remote code execution is confirmed in a third phase, that is currently probable but not yet proven. The attack vector is straightforward. A specially crafted PDF file. Exploitation requires no user interaction beyond opening the file. When the PDF is opened in Adobe Reader, some heavily obfuscated JavaScript executes automatically. The vulnerability exploits Adobe Reader's JavaScript engine by abusing two sandboxed Acrobat APIs outside their expected context. The first is util.readFileIntoStream, a legitimate Acrobat function used here to read local files and collect sensitive data from the victim system. The second is RSS.addFeed, repurposed to exfiltrate the collected data to the C2 server and receive additional AES-encrypted JavaScript payloads. Neither of these is an obscure or undocumented API. They are legitimate Acrobat features that the exploit operator has found a way to invoke in a manner that bypasses sandbox controls. No privilege escalation is required for the initial reconnaissance phase. The exploitation chain has 3 identified phases. Phase 1 is reconnaissance confirmed. Upon opening the PDF, the obfuscated JavaScript collects system information, OS version, language settings, local file paths, Adobe Reader version. This data is transmitted to the C2 server for server-side victim filtering. Sandbox environments are detected and receive empty responses from the C2. This is a deliberate design choice by the operator and explains why the initial detection rate on VirusTotal was 2 out of 64 engines for the first known sample. If the C2 determines that the environment is a sandbox, the attack chain stops and leaves no trace. Only real, unprotected targets proceed to Phase 2. Phase 2 is local data exfiltration, also confirmed. On systems the operator determines are of interest, the C2 returns a second-stage JavaScript payload. Successful exploitation enables access to and exfiltration of local files to the C2 server. The scope of what can be accessed depends on the permissions of the Adobe Reader process and the content of the local file system. But in a standard enterprise workstation context, this means documents, credentials stored in files, configuration files, and any other locally accessible data. Phase 3, remote code execution combined with sandbox escape, is not yet confirmed, but is considered probable by the research community. According to Haifei Li, the first exploit serves as a beachhead intended to deliver second-stage RCE and sandbox escape exploits. The sophistication of the campaign, the active maintenance of multiple reader version targets, and the presence of a new endpoint under development all support this assessment. If Phase 3 is confirmed, the CVSS 3.1 score moves from 7.8 to 8.6, and the operational impact escalates from data exfiltration to full system compromise. 2 known samples define the timeline and the evolution of this exploit. The first, designated version 1, was uploaded to VirusTotal on November 28, 2025. It represents a prototype phase, lighter obfuscation, C2 on a bare IP address, broad OS targeting. The second, designated version 2, was uploaded on March 23, 2026. This is the production version. Hardened obfuscation, domain-based C2, focused Windows 10 targeting, A third version has not been captured but is inferred from the observation of a /S12 endpoint targeting reader, version 25.x, confirming active ongoing development. Windows 10 is the primary confirmed target of the current exploit. Windows 7 and 32-bit Adobe Reader are not supported by the current exploit chain. Windows 11 triggers an ERR_OS_WIN11_UN SUPPOR-TED error in known samples, but the /S-12 endpoint currently under development already targets reader version 25.x, which runs on Windows 11. The window of Windows 11 immunity is temporary and should not be treated as a durable protection. The C2 infrastructure is configured with high operational security. The C2 port 34123 is not visible to showdown scans. The listener is likely filtered to accept connections only from target IP ranges or activated on demand. Both identified C2 servers are currently offline, most likely rotated to new infrastructure after the public disclosure on April 9th. The C2 performs server-side filtering throughout. Sandbox environments receive empty responses. Real victims receive payloads. The Lure documents in both identified samples contain Russian language content related to current events in Russia's oil and gas sector. This suggests deliberate sectoral targeting. Energy sector organizations with Russian language document flows are a likely primary target profile, without enabling formal attribution at this stage. The IOC set currently available covers 2 known samples. The version 2 production sample SHA-256 hash is 54077A5B, followed by the full string published by N3MES1S. The version 1 prototype hash is partial, 65-D-C-A-3-4-B, with the remainder available in the full forensic report. The confirmed C2 IP is 188.214.34.20 and port 34123. Currently offline. Observed malicious fill names include invoice54, o.pdf, and a test file with an intentionally obvious name, alongside generic decoy names such as manual.pdf, document.pdf, and attachment.pdf used in sandbox variants. The network-level behavioral indicator to block is any outbound HTTP request whose user agent header contains the string Adobe synchronizer. This is the C2 communication signature of the exploit. There is no official patch and no official workaround from Adobe at the time of this episode. The mitigation posture is therefore based entirely on compensating controls. The most immediately actionable control is application substitution. Stop opening PDF files in Adobe Reader and route all PDF viewing through a web browser, Chrome, Edge, or Firefox, or an alternative reader. These environments do not expose the util.readFileIntoStream and RSS.addFeed AP is that the exploit abuses. This is a zero-cost, immediately deployable control that eliminates the current attack vector without waiting for Adobe to publish a patch. At the network level, block all outbound HTTP traffic whose user agent header contains Adobe Synchronizer. Block the known C2 IP 188.214.34.20 on port 34123 if not already covered by existing policy. These are positive IOC blocks, not probabilistic controls. They match confirmed exploit infrastructure. For endpoint detection, monitor for suspicious calls to util.readFileIntoStream and RSS.addFeed AP is originating from Adobe Reader processes. Monitor outbound network connections initiated by acrord32.exe or acrobat.exe processes, particularly toward unrecognized destinations on non-standard ports. Any outbound connection from an Adobe Reader process to an external host on a non-standard port is anomalous and should trigger investigation. For threat hunting, the retroactive search window is November 2025 to the present. The exploit has been in operation for at least 5 months before public disclosure, which means any organization that has not been monitoring Adobe Reader network behavior during that period has a potential exposure window that needs to be assessed. Integrate the available IOCs into SIEM and EDR tooling and run the retroactive search immediately. The low detection rate of the version 1 sample, 2 out of 64 virus total engines at time of upload, means that existing antivirus and EDR detections may not have fired on earlier infections. On user awareness, alert all staff to the risk associated with PDF attachments received by email, including from known senders who may themselves be compromised. The lure documents in the identified samples are contextually plausible and invoice PDF a sector-relevant document, which is exactly what social engineering targeting looks like. The procedure for reporting suspicious attachments without opening them needs to be reinforced now before a patch is available. What to watch going forward? Adobe's patch timeline is the critical variable. The notification was issued on April 7th, and the vulnerability was publicly disclosed on April 9th. Adobe is operating under public pressure to release a fix, but no patch timeline has been communicated. The /S-12 endpoint development confirms that the operator is actively expanding the target scope beyond Windows 10 to Windows 11 and Reader version 25. The current Windows 11 immunity is an artifact of the current exploit build, not a design characteristic of the vulnerability. Any organization treating Windows 11 as a safe harbor against this threat is operating on incorrect assumptions. The retroactive threat hunting scope should be treated as urgent. 5 months of potential undetected exposure is not a theoretical risk in organizations where PDF workflows are standard. And that's it, this episode ends. I hope it will provide you with clear and useful information. Until then, we don't think, we patch. If you are a new listener, feel free to subscribe to the RadioCSIRT podcast. We are available in both English, Italian, Spanish, and French on Apple Podcasts, Amazon Music, YouTube, Deezer, and Spotify. All open source intelligence links used in this episode are available on RadioCSIRT.com. See you soon for a new episode. Take care. Goodbye.